Hey everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV. Well, it's Tuesday, you know what that means. It's time once again for Bobke's Broom Wagon. A lot of racing to get to. Giro d'Italia in full swing. 4 days of Dunkirk. Motos crashing the bikers again. We got some wild musings this week. And of course, the ubiquitous tweet of the week. All that coming up on Bobke's Broom Wagon. All right, let's get right into the Giro d'Italia. Stage number 1, time trial. Tom Dumoulin bringing the Giant team back on top. It's been a rough spring for the Giant squad. Last week I announced that John Degenkolb had just returned to racing. That is true. Degenkolb scheduled to do the Tour of California coming up in a few days on the west coast of the United States. But in the meantime, his teammate Tom Dumoulin winning the opening Stage 1 time trial of the Giro d'Italia to get himself and his teammates the first pink jersey of this year's Giro. For Tom Dumoulin and the Giant squad, it's been a rocky spring. There was a big car wreck that we've been reporting on continuously throughout the spring, taking out a lot of the team riders at a training camp way back in the early spring, late winter training camp in Alicante, Spain, when a driver going the wrong way on the road just wiped out a pile of the Giant riders. And John Degenkolb just back to racing, and Tom Dumoulin bringing the pink jersey to his teammates, and that should go a long way in restoring the morale and the confidence of the Giant squad. So great ride by Tom Dumoulin. It was close, but he got the win in the opening time trial. Also, the good from the Giro, Marcel Kittel back on top of the sprint game. Marcel Kittel absolutely unstoppable so far in the Giro d'Italia, getting the better of some of the best sprinters on the planet. The sprint field in the Giro this year is very strong. Arnaud Démare is there, Andre Greipel is there, Caleb Ewan is there, Giacomo Nizzolo is there, and Kittel, clean wheels, dominating the sprint so far. Stage number 2 got the win. Stage number 3 got the win again, and with that, got the pink jersey. So Marcel Kittel having a storybook beginning to the Giro d'Italia this year. Martin Cialinghi, Lotto Jumbo, leader's jersey in the Giro in his home country of the Netherlands. Got a chance to invite his kids up on the podium with him, and here's the victory celebration. You gotta love it when the kids can dance. All right. Also in the good, from the 4 days of Dunkirk, Brian Coquard. Holy cow. First 3 stages, 3 wins. 3 in a row. Barely losing the sprint in the last stage and winning the overall in the 4 days of Dunkirk. Direct Energy rider Brian Coquard on fire in the 4 days of Dunkirk. It would not surprise me if he got a sprint win in the Tour de France against the very best in the world. That is another level. But Brian Coquard got very close a number of times in last year's Tour de France. So watch for Brian Coquard to carry this form forward and have a good chance at winning some sprint stages. Maybe not the ones that Marcel Kittel is aiming for, but Brian Coquard also pretty handy in the hills. So I'm sure Brian Coquard with these wins will have a lot of confidence going into the Tour de France. We'll see if he can get the goods for his team in the Tour, but holy cow. It's difficult to imagine doing a lot better than winning 3 stages in the 4 days of Dunkirk and getting the better of Nasser Bohany in those races. So great riding by the Direct Energy team and Brian Coquard. His teammate just won the Tour of Yorkshire last week, if you remember from the previous Broom Wagon. That is none other than Titi. How did they say? They say in the islands where he grew up, Petite Blanche, Titi. Thomas Voeckler, irrepressible. So if some of his morale is rubbing off on Brian Coquard, Coquard is going to have a great season. All right, well, the bad. Fabian Cancellara has perhaps lost his last chance to win the pink jersey during his career. Fabien has led the Vuelta, he's led the Tour de France, he's been in the yellow jersey many days during his career, but never got the pink jersey, was hoping to do that, but got sick before the start of the Giro and wound up 8th in the prologue. So not great for Fabien. He's still in the Giro, and he might get a stage win. There's a couple of more time trials, but as far as the pink jersey, those hopes are probably dashed. Also, J.C. Perot. Take a look at this shot. Man, no recollection of the crash, crashing out. He's dropped out of the Giro, thankfully. I mean, if you can't remember the crash, you can't remember the stage, you can't remember where you wake up, you are probably have some symptoms of being concussed, having a concussion. So J.C. Perot out of the Giro d'Italia with a pretty nasty crash. All right, on to the ugly. Talked about this in a previous video. This is what happens when you're either misdirected, don't know where you're going, or don't know what you're doing. Moto driver can see coming into a big roundabout, fairly straightforward, it seems like. But if you're one of the first few riders, your instinct is to follow the moto. That's what you do. And the moto turns right instead of going around the roundabout and continuing straight. Most of the field sees that, but if you take a look at this, it's just another example of the motorcycles really being a problem in professional cycling so far this year. I don't think we've ever had so many incidences, so many occasions that the motorbike have knocked cyclists over, and it's just becoming pandemic in the sport, and it has to stop. The UCI has to do something about this, and I spoke a lot about it, but this is about as hopefully as ugly as it gets for the rest of the year. Riders hitting the deck out of the 4 days of Dunkirk, and most heartbreaking on this, which I mentioned before, is the photographer keeps filming. How about seeing if the guy you just knocked down is okay, and then continue filming it? Everybody has their job description, but let's put humanity before that sometimes, okay? Somebody's fallen and is hurt. Stop what you're doing to help them. And more importantly, though, when are we going to hear from the UCI about this very obvious problem? It's not like a rumor. It's really quite remarkable at this point that the UCI has not come out and said something definitive about what is obviously, to me, a big problem that the cyclists face every mile of every race. The UCI rules in about a lot of things, but why don't they elucidate us about why the motorcycles and the caravan, the cars, are coming into contact with the riders so frequently? It's a disaster. All right. That's the good, the bad, and the ugly from the racing. And now it's time for the Musette Musings. For the Musette Musings, we got to go to Alexander Geniez' Knucklefest with Hubert Dupont after stage in the Giro d'Italia. The stakes are pretty high for Geniez. 9th in last year's Giro, hoping for a top 5 in this year's, but lost a minute 37 on the run-in to the finish line on the stage in the Giro, and he decided to take his frustration out on Hubert Dupont. Whether or not Dupont was the cause of Geniez losing the time, that put a serious hamper on his GC aspirations, it has not been stated. But the lesson here, guys, as we take a look at the pushing and shoving between Geniez, the FDJ rider, and Dupont, the AG2R rider, guys, you're always on camera. You are always being scrutinized. You what you do in the, I mean, everybody, this is a good lesson to be learned. Be cool. No fighting. There's no fighting in bike racing. Let your legs do the talking and hope for the best. Pushing and shoving, a dust up is you cannot have this. You cannot, if you're an official at a bicycle race and you see this, both or whoever the protagonist is, whoever the aggressor is, the chances of being kicked out of the race are pretty high. So Geniez was lucky to avoid that, and he could have most certainly been kicked out of the race. But you're always on film. You're always being videoed by somebody with their cell phone or with a movie camera or their GoPro or a variety of other cameras, unless of course you're Fran Ventoso in Paris-Roubaix. And then there's no evidence whatsoever that your knee got sliced open by a disc brake, and so your speculation is now fodder for disbelief. Just kidding, that's a whole nother story. Let's not get back into that just yet. All right. Okay. Patrick Lefevre. Let me read exactly Patrick Lefevre. Now, he's the general manager of the EDIC squad, one of the biggest budgets of all of professional cycling, blanked, goose eggs, no wins in the Spring Classic. So feeling a little bit of the heat, I suppose, from the sponsors. This is what Patrick Lefevre had to say after stage number 3. No one wants to work with us. There are a lot of sprinters, but nobody works. You don't get rewarded if you don't work. The alternative, Patrick, you should know well, you do work, and Kittel beats you anyways. I'm going to take the opposite tack as Patrick Lefevre. Don't help them. Don't anybody help EDICs at all, ever. If you help EDICs in any way, they will beat you. That's as simple as that. Marcel Kittel will win the sprint. So don't help them. Send your riders in the breakaway. Put more pressure on EDICs. If you do a cakewalk to the finish line, Kittel will beat you. He's the fastest man in cycling right now. And so good luck to the EDIC squad. And they're one of the most successful teams in all of professional bike racing. And Marcel Kittel is perhaps the fastest sprinter. So I don't think that taking to the Twitter sphere or the interviewing opportunities that Patrick Lefevre has, criticizing other teams for not working, I don't think is going to help getting them to cooperate. That wouldn't, if it was my team, I had a fast sprinter, I'd say, guys, you're not doing 1 mile of work. All you're doing is the lead out, and we're putting our second strongest guy in the breakaway to hopefully stay away from the field. So Patrick Lefevre, you might not get any traction with your criticism of the other teams. That's just the way it is. Lefevre went on to say that the classics would have been boring if his team wasn't there to animate the races, even though they lost all of them. But I said in a previous Broom Wagon, it's just not going to happen. Cooperating with EDICs is a good way to lose. So you might have to come up with a different game plan. If EDICs places a rider in the breakaway, you got a whole nother bike race. And the Giro is going to be really exciting when the other teams start to do that, and EDICs changes their tactics. So good luck to everybody in the Giro that's racing against Marcel Kittel, and don't listen to Patrick Lefevre. All right, one more Musette musing, and the curious case of Edouard Vogrinov gets a little bit more curious. He is free to race. If we recall, banned for drugs that were put on the banned substance list after a long study, and meldonium is the name of the substance, if I recall correctly. Banned as of December 31st, 2015. Fine, fair enough. It's on the banned substance list, but what the UCI failed to do, and this is embarrassing. This is an embarrassment of the entire anti-doping effort, the spirit of anti-doping, for people to believe in what they're seeing is an authentic spectacle of natural talent. That's what the stakes are. And Edward Vogeranov is free to race because they could not determine how long the substance would stay in the system. So Vogeranov failed a test early in the year, was given a ban. On appeal, they said, wait a minute, it might be possible that there was still some residual molecules of the banned substance in Vogeranov's anti-doping sample. So some melodium left over. And what you need to do beforehand is determine absolutely how long meldonium will stay in your system after you stop taking it. If the outer limits, the absolutely outer, final, could no way be in your system, let's say, for example, hypothetically, is 3 months. And scientists determine that if you stop taking it, in 3 months' time, there will not be one single molecule left in your system. And if it's a week, fine. If it's a month, fine. If it's 2 months, fine. Let's say it's 3 months, and you're the UCI. The absolute final day that there could be any traces of it is 3 months. You do 6 months. You double whatever the recommendation is. So the riders would theoretically have 6 months. And that would absolutely guarantee that if it was in your system after that, you were cheating. The UCI did not do that. They generated a huge headline, Vogeranov positive. And so the media frenzy begins. And this is a step backwards in the anti-doping movement. That not that Vogeranov is free to race, but that they found him positive in the first place for having perhaps residual amounts in his system of a banned substance. So by the letter of the rule, he was a cheater. But now that's not the case, because he may have stopped the 31st of December 2015, and now he's free to race, not positive. So fair enough for Vogeranov. He stopped taking it when it came on the list and was the victim of an embarrassing oversight on behalf of the UCI in regulating the substance that he was found to be positive for. I said this how many times? Way too many times. That's for sure. Brian Cookson's leadership of the UCI has not been an improvement in spite of the promises he made to become president, to be elected. So if there's another substance please, that's going on the list, please give the peloton a chance to let it clear their system unequivocally, without any doubt, before you start banning riders for being positive for that drug. Okay, that's enough Musette musings. For the tweet of the week, let's go to my main man, Ben King. Tweet of the week, fresh omelet. Oh baby, look at the rooster. The rooster's looking good. The hens, they seem pretty happy. I don't know. Maybe a little bummed that the offspring are going to vanish into Ben King's omelet pan, but I don't know if anybody out there has had fresh eggs straight from the nest, but they are unbelievably delicious. I would not be surprised if Ben King starts flying on the bicycle. All right. That's it for the Broom Wagon this week. Thanks for your comments, everybody. Keep them coming. Subscriptions, love them. Thumbs up. Thumbs up are nice. If you like these, give me a thumbs up. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Thanks a lot, everybody. Until next time. Why did the motorbikes continue to plague the sport this year? It's really, really disturbing. Because the men and women that are cyclists, this is their livelihood. And if the UCI cannot provide them with a safe working environment, then the UCI is redundant.